Yeah, okay, I'll try again. Good evening, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Councillor Mohammed Ayub. I chair the Traffic Managers Subcommittee. I would like to welcome everybody to tonight's meeting. With councillors are required to meet in person following the expiry of Coronavirus Act regulation, which is permitted online meeting. We will be using the equipment connecting to the chamber in Microsoft Teams. There is a live stream available through the Teams and recording of it. This meeting will be uploaded to the website afterwards. Thank you. And I'll begin the first item we have is declaration of interest. Do I see on the floor? I don't see any declaration of interest. I have declaration of interest on item 6, which I will be leaving the meeting, and my vice chair will take that item. Then I'll return for the rest of the agenda. Thank you. Minutes of the meeting, previous meeting, which was held 14th of September 2020. Can I take those to be correct minutes? Okay, fine. Item 3 is the questions from the member of public and also councillors. We don't have any questions from member of public, but we have one from Councillor White.
Thank you very much, Chair. Much appreciated. This question is on tackling speeding on Northumberland Avenue. Green Party councillors in Redlands and Catesgrove say residents are still complaining about drivers speeding on Northumberland Avenue in the downhill stretch between Christchurch Gardens and Hexham Road. We have requested the anti-speeding signage, but don't think it will make a lasting difference. What further action is the council able to take to tackle speeding on this road?
Chair, I thank just a minute. Thank you, Councillor White. Could I ask Councillor Tony Page, lead member of Climate and Transport, to respond on my behalf? Councillor Page.
Yeah, can I thank Councillor White for his question? This section of Northumberland Avenue is within a clearly signed 20-mile-per-hour zone and contains raised tables, build-outs, traffic islands and coloured paved surfaces as recognised traffic calming features. Complaints of continued speeding sadly further highlight the disregard that some motorists have for the law and the safety of others. They are willfully speeding. I would like to draw to your attention a report on tonight's agenda, item 8, relating to the evaluation of the Redlands Still-funded scheme to enhance local traffic calming features. This scheme originated from similar experiences of willful speeding within a 20 mph zone. Within this report, officers have summarised the challenges that local authorities face in addressing speeding. You will be aware, Councillor White, that despite many years of lobbying the government and police, enforcement of speeding rests solely with the police, and this also extends to the installation and operation of speed camera devices. Local authorities are therefore left only with the option of installing costly local physical measures, such as speed humps or cushions, and implementation of these measures, when funding is available, can have a positive influence on traffic speeds, but cannot be guaranteed to eradicate speeding. The report on tonight's agenda references the local objections and complaints that can arise from the introduction of these physical features. In direct answer to your question, the council could propose to install additional traffic calming measures along this road, subject to the identification of funding for scheme development and delivery, which would additionally require prior statutory consultation. May I suggest that you engage with the local ward councillors who can work with residents to consider whether additional physical measures would be supported by local residents. If so, local councillors could ask our officers to add the request to a future agenda. And we have the request for traffic management measures as a standing item where it can be considered for any possible funding allocations. By way of a wider update, Last week on 2nd November, I attended the Thames Valley Road Safety Summit in Maidenhead, hosted by the current Police and Crime Commissioner, Matt Barber, at which I again raised the lack of TVP, Thames Valley Police resourcing for enforcing 20 mph zones. I reiterated this council's policy of seeking decriminalised speed enforcement powers that would enable us to use cameras to back up 20 mph enforcement in Reading. This would be in the same way that we currently effectively use cameras to enforce bus lanes and shortly will be using to enforce yellow box junctions and other moving traffic offences. It is my impression that TVP remains as resistant as ever to either sharing or transferring these enforcement powers, in the same way that over 20 years ago they opposed the transfer and decriminalisation of parking enforcement in the borough. That transfer too was preceded by a lengthy period of lack of police enforcement, which led to our eventually taking over those functions as well. As was clearly set out at the beginning of this answer, we have no further powers to enforce 20 mph zones other than utilising physical features which have already largely been put in place along Northumberland Avenue and many other areas of the town. We will continue to lobby Thames Valley Police, the Local Government Association and the government to facilitate a transfer of speed enforcement powers to Reading Council in the interests of delivering truly effective traffic calming in the borough.
Thank you, Councillor Page. Councillor White, do you have a supplementary?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the next item, which is petitions. We have 4 of them. So first is petition 4A. Can I ask Jane Lee to come forward, please? Good evening, welcome.
Good evening.
And can you just state your name and who you are, please, before you begin?
My name's Jane Lynch. I live on Newlands Avenue in Caversham. And I'm petitioning about the junction, which we call the Last Crumb Junction. It's where Prospect Street, Peppard Road, Henley Road and Westfield Roads meet.
Right, thank you. You have 5 minutes and I will, when minutes left, I will warn you to stop. Okay. Good
evening. I use the Last Crumb Junction virtually every time I leave the house. My daughter Jessie calls it the scary junction. I use it as a pedestrian, a car user and a cyclist. I feel so strongly there needs to be better provision for pedestrians to navigate that junction that whilst I've been on maternity leave, I decided I wanted to do something about it. Just taking my daughter to Westfield Playground with my baby in the buggy was a terrifying experience. I liaised with our MP, Matt Rodder, who was very supportive, and we created a survey which we delivered to over 2,000 households in the vicinity of that junction. The response was extraordinary. We had 1,400 people respond to us. As you can see from the results in Appendix 1, the vast majority of people do not feel safe crossing there. They walk a long way to actively avoid that junction. The comments stretch to 33 pages, which shows just how passionately the residents feel about this. Comments such as, "I take my life in my own hands," "Please do something, my daughter and I nearly got knocked over there last week." There is no safe place for pedestrians to navigate that junction. The only way is to know the sequence of the traffic lights and literally to run. This is almost impossible if you're elderly, disabled, you've got a dog, you've got children, particularly a buggy. And it's even worse because cars accelerate through that junction and they regularly run red lights. And it's the only time people have to cross. And I'm not just talking one car going through a red light when it's turning from amber to red, I'm talking 2 or 3. The only other way to navigate these busy roads is a zebra crossing nearly at the bottom of Prospect Street, a controlled crossing all the way down Henley Road at the shops, and then there's a zebra crossing right at the top of Peppard Road into Emma Green. There are huge numbers of people that have to navigate that junction every day for work, school and leisure. Balmoor Park is a destination for dog walkers, for joggers. You've got Queen Anne's School, Caversham Prep School, Chiltern Nursery, all within a stone's throw of that junction. Children are walking up to Highdown Secondary School from there. They're walking down to Thameside Primary, to name just a few. It is the main thoroughfare if you live in North Caversham and Emma Green to get down south into Caversham, into Reading, using the train station. We've had the pedestrian bridge put in, which is great, and we've got a zebra crossing now on Gosbrook Road. But once you get to the top of Westfield Road, the infrastructure ends, you're left abandoned. This is first and foremost a safety issue. It is an accident waiting to happen. I see near misses every single day. Cars running red lights on almost every time the traffic lights change only increases the chance of a serious accident, and these motorists face no penalties. It saddens me that when this junction was last debated at such a committee meeting in January 2018, the lack of serious accidents there was cited. Do we really need to wait for someone to be killed or maimed there till we actually do something? But this is also an environmental issue. This council declared a carbon emergency in 2019. The Reading Transport Strategy 2036 plans to address climate change by reducing emissions and improving air quality. Again, when this junction was debated in January 2018, traffic flow was cited, but surely now we have to change our mindset. We should be encouraging our people to have active and healthy lifestyles and make it easier for them to choose to walk to school or to work, or to choose to use their bikes, or to access the park for running and fitness. Instead, fears for their safety are
You have a
inhibiting
minute left, please.
pedestrians and cyclists from using that junction, and we're increasing car journeys, congestion and pollution. I've read the council's report and I realise the solution is not straightforward. This is a traffic sensitive junction, and if you stopped all the traffic so that pedestrians could cross in every direction, there are worries about further tailbacks. But at the very least, if motorists played by the rules, it would be safer to cross there. Please, can we look at controlling the speed of cars through that junction? Perhaps consider a 20-mile-per-hour limit, but also think about cameras to stop people speeding through there and stop them jumping red lights. Even a slight delay on the traffic lights would give people more of an opportunity to cross there. I'm aware that there's limited space around the junction, and I'm aware that funding is an issue, but there are some quite simple changes that we could do to make it safer. Even putting signage there would help to remind motorists to slow down. To the councillors who are not familiar with the junction, please come and spend 10 minutes.
Thank you. I have to stop you there. Time's up.
Okay.
But does the subcommittee want to ask any questions? No? Fine. Councillor Matthew.
Hi. Thanks, Mohammed. Yeah, I'd just like to thank Jane, the petitioner, for coming, speaking to the committee today and making the case, but also putting in the effort to collect the signatures. I think we should acknowledge the level of support that there is for the crossing at this junction, or at the very least that there should be one near to it. But I mean, I do recognise that likely funding for this junction would be linked to the SIL money from the golf course development at Emma Green, which means that we would need to wait a decent amount of time to actually be able to receive that money, and that may not and would probably be unlikely to cover the entire costs of a crossing. But at the same time, as Jane mentions, we do need to understand the possible effect on traffic in Caversham. Having said that, there's a considerable increase in usage of that junction over the last 20 or 30 years, let alone in the last couple of years. So I think that it's a valuable contribution that the petition is to this this item.
Thank you. Councillor Hornsby-Smith, you indicate.
Yeah, could I just ask Jane if you've got any data within the petition that isn't in the report that talks a little bit about the desire lines? I mean, it's a really complicated junction, and it's a staggered junction. There's all kinds of issues there, and I entirely endorse what Councillor Yeo is saying. But I just wondered if you've got any specific data of, 60% of people want to cross in this way and 30% this way and 10%. Do you have anything like that?
No, we don't have specifics
Okay,
like that.
That might be something that could be looked into if we are able to take this on. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for bringing this petition here and thank you for coming along and presenting it to us. As Councillor Yeo did say, it was a planning condition on the golf course that improvements be made, and I have asked to explore the possibility of pedestrian crossings around there anyway. And as you'll hear from the next item, waiting for a serious accident doesn't necessarily mean this council will act. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Thank you very much for coming in this evening, and we'll take this aboard and find out the report. The officers will write back to you regarding this. Thank you for coming in tonight.
Oh, is that it? Okay. Can I ask one question? No. Okay.
Can we have the next petitioner, which is yeah, I did say that we report. Do we agree to recommended action, everybody, subcommittee? Yeah? Yeah, good. The next petitioner is request to urgent safety of Henley Road and Caversham Lake access road junction. Can I call on Candy Hall to come to the top? Good evening, welcome. You have 5 minutes to speak, and I will remind you when there's a minute to go. And your time will start once you start speaking. Could you just introduce to the committee who you are? And thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. My name's Candy Hall. I'm a local mother of 2 small children, and I live and work very close to the dangerous, complicated and busy junction of Henley Road and Marina Access Road, often referred to as the Caversham Lakes Access Road, which is a hotspot for road traffic accidents and near misses. There have been a number of accidents this year, some of which required emergency services to attend. I was shocked to hear of an accident on the 13th of September, which resulted in a motorcyclist needing to be defibrillated to save his life. I raised my concerns on social media about the high frequency of accidents at this junction and started my petition, which has gathered over 520 signatures already. Since raising these concerns and starting the petition, there has been another accident which resulted in both police and ambulance attending. I have had large numbers of local people reach out to me with stories of accidents they have been involved in at this junction, many personal accounts of near misses, photographs of accidents, police reports, and to express their concern. Local resident Liz Bradbury shared this comment. I'm a local resident who uses the junction regularly, turning left towards Henley, and I have seen many confused, impatient, fast drivers trying to pull out of Caversham Lakes / the marina when it isn't safe to do so. It just isn't clear enough. I have 3 teenagers, one who will be driving very soon, who I will be terrified for when negotiating this type of junction. Please help us to keep everyone safe. The risk is not worth it. And Paula Cuthbertson commented, I live opposite and someone is going to get seriously hurt. We have almost weekly accidents or near misses. It needs sorting ASAP before someone loses their life. I have so many comments like these that I can share with you. Local people are frightened and we urge you to take quick action to help us keep our community safe. We understand that official data shows few accidents at this junction. However, Crash Map UK clearly shows this is a hotspot, and Parish Council Online shows significant accidents around this junction, including fatalities, and local people are seeing accidents and near misses on a regular basis. The Marina Access Road is home to many local businesses, notably the very popular Caversham Lakes, which I know have lost their latest planning application. But in addition to this, there is a busy cafe, a boat sales office, and holiday lettings for boats. These all bring in people from outside of the area who are unfamiliar with this junction, further increasing the risk. There are also hundreds of permanent residents living on boats in the marina who deserve safe road access to their homes. There are no traffic control measures or signage on the Marina Access Road, despite it being less than 1 car length from a complicated junction on a busy 3-lane A road with a variable speed limit and a phased traffic light system. If you look at the aerial photograph at the top there, you can see that the road coming up from the right-hand corner is a 50 miles per hour limit. And the traffic lights at the bottom where it says Henley Road is a phased 2-way traffic light. So if you're coming from Caversham Park Village, going across to the lakes at the bottom, there can be stationary cars either side of the keep clear box. So you'd think it would be safe to go, but someone can be coming at 50 miles an hour in between you and those cars for the green traffic light going up towards the Caversham Park Road. So you can see how this is unsafe and why there are so many accidents. Regardless of Caversham Lake's closure, local residents are concerned and noticing accidents and near misses regularly. Are you willing to instruct officers to work with Oxfordshire County Council officers to review the design, layout and safety of the junction, including the access road? Thank you.
Thank you. Does the subcommittee have any questions for the petitioner? Councillor?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you. I'm one of the Emma Green councillors, so I'm very grateful to you for bringing the petition. I know the work you've been doing on it. Councillor Carnell has been working with you as well. We'll be supporting the recommendation tonight because at least it does offer some further monitoring of the statistics. I fully appreciate the border can be confusing as well. It is technically literally just outside the border of Emma Green, and with the South Oxfordshire aspect that can complicate things. But I would just say to the committee that while the stats would suggest that the problem is not as acute as local people are saying, I know who I believe, and I would much rather listen to the collective voice of those who have signed the petition and expressed their concern online. Surely we should not, as Councillor Carnell said for the previous petition, just wait for the accident tally to reach the level that it needs to before action can be taken. Yes, this may be circumstantial, but surely common sense would dictate that we look at this seriously. It says that as well that creating any material change to the junction would be reliant on contributions should a planning application succeed and the traffic increase to that extent. It's not by any means certain, and I'm not commenting on the outcome of any appeal process. That's a matter for future committees to decide outside of this body. But surely we could look at, as well as part of this, I would hope that officers could look at a cost-effective solution, at least some redesign or signage at the very least that would perhaps be cheaper. It's clear that this is an extremely dangerous junction. Something needs to be done. And while we will be supporting this recommendation tonight for the monitoring to continue, we feel that more should be done and more swiftly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Page. Yeah.
Chair, can I thank you for the petition? Could I also urge you to put pressure on the adjoining authorities, because it's just been made clear a large chunk of this area is outside of Reading Borough, over which we have no control. And we have adjoining South Oxfordshire District Council and Oxfordshire County Council, both of which disregard the interests of their southernmost residents, and that is a sad reflection on both authorities. I suppose if you were based in Didcot, as South Oxfordshire is, and in Oxford, as Oxfordshire is, this part of the world is very remote and of scant concern. And unfortunately, when it comes to resources as well, there's very little commitment. So any pressure you can bring to bear on the councillors in South Oxfordshire and Oxfordshire County Council that surround that area would be appreciated. As you know, we submitted objections to the recent planning application, which was a retrospective one. So it's not as though the activity hasn't already happened. It has, and the council has refused it. I suppose the pressure we need to put on South Oxfordshire as the planning authority is to consider appropriate enforcement action, and whether that then will take place, well, we'll see. I would make the point, though, in defence of the police that obviously the accidents that they record are of a certain category. If there's an accident involving motorists where there's no injury, and details are exchanged and the police aren't involved, those aren't necessarily recorded. Those are quite possibly the accidents that local residents may see. And so they won't feature on the same statistical basis that is recorded here and that the police submit officially to us. So it's not a case of right or wrong. It's the fact that a certain category of accident, a near miss, won't necessarily be recorded by the police. But this is clearly a junction with problems, and we all know it. And you've identified part of the problem, namely stepping down when you're coming into the borough from along the A4155. There's a big drop in speed limit, and a number of motorists, particularly if they can take the lights on a green phase, will not slow down. And I hope you were here for the earlier answer I gave about speed enforcement. We don't have the powers. We'd love to be able to use our camera network to enforce on that. So we will agree the recommended action and engagement at officer level, but ultimately does require more commitment and more understanding from South Oxfordshire and Oxfordshire at elected member level, the sort of people you're talking to here this evening. And so any pressure you can bring to bear as well would assist us.
Thank you. I'll take that.
Thank you, Councillor Page. Does the committee note and take all the points of order? And do the committee agree with it? Agreed? Okay. Thank you for coming in tonight. Please, either you can stay or take a seat or make it along. Okay. The next item we have is update on Kendrick Road resident parking permit. Can I ask? Is Mr. Hammond here? All right. Right. Good evening, Mr. Hammond. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you.
Yeah. Right. Can I? You have 5 minutes to speak on this, and I will let you know when there's a minute to go.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can you introduce yourself to the committee and let you know?
My name is Edward Hammond. I'm a director at Kendrick Court Limited. All we're asking this evening is that you come to the same kind of a decision that any rational person acting fairly would do, faced with the evidence before them. When the council decided that residents in flats within Reading would not be allowed street side parking, that was because they were introducing a new parking scheme, and there was a concern that it might become oversaturated. That was 6 years ago. Zone 10R has got 12% free capacity still, and yet this rule is still in place, and it's still being used to stop us from getting parking. In Kendrick Road, most of the addresses there are houses, and they've all got off-road parking. The other ones are blocks of flats, and all the blocks of flats have got at least one parking space per address, except for one, and that's Kendrick Court. They're being told that the space that's in Kendrick Court needs to be held in reserve in case other residents within Zone 10R want to park there. We've been waiting 6 years for this horde to arrive, and they still haven't arrived. How long are we expected to wait? How long would a rational person be expect us to wait? We've been advised that we should apply for discretionary permits. We've been applying for discretionary permits for the last 6 years. And if you keep doing the same, repeating the same process time and time again and expecting a different outcome, that's often defined as being insanity. So why on earth is the council recommending something which is obviously insane as a course of action to us? It doesn't make any sense either. But it's also been suggested that, well, what we should do is we should put these applications in and we should present the information that that I have presented to you. None of it's new. None of it is new. All the applications that have been going in over the last 6 years to the council have had this information in them. They must have developed a picture of exactly what kind of problems Kendrick Court has. And so when these applications come in, they've got a fairly good context by which to assess them. It's not working. It clearly isn't working. So as a course of action, as a recommendation, I think we should drop it. It just isn't going to work. The other problem we've got is that the main rule which was put in place, when it gives you a situation where you've got a whole street where the parking is largely empty, then obviously something has gone wrong, and the rule set that you're using at the moment needs to be revised. Now, we've proposed that if you said, okay, somebody applying from an address where there was less than one parking space, off-road parking space per address, because of planning decisions that were made 80 years ago or more, and where there's an abundance of free local curbside parking, then the applicant should be allowed to actually get that parking. We've got this situation where we're just stubbornly determined that, that we won't change anything, and that really isn't helping, because intelligent systems grow by sort of putting up a rule set and you try it, and then you come across an anomaly and you think, okay, and this is very clearly there's a major anomaly here that does need to be addressed. So what you do is you put up a new rule and you try that. And that's all we're asking you to do. And I've just proposed the rule.
You have 1 minute, sir, to wrap up.
Thank you. That rule has built into it is a mechanism that makes sure that you don't get oversaturation. We don't have time to start talking about the proposal for tradesmen and what to do when, for example, if you've ever had a burst water main, you'll know that this proposal, the suggestion that was made by the council, is not a good one. It isn't a practical one at all. Councillors, all we're asking you to do is just make a decision that any rational person looking at this evidence and acting fairly would do. That's all we ask. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor, looking around. Councillor, you indicated you want to speak.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just confirm, are we going to be debating this afterwards, or are we moving straight on, firstly?
Sorry, thank you, Chair. There are recommendations in the report, so my view from an officer's perspective is that, yeah, it can be debated if there are different recommendations that the subcommittee wants to make.
Thank you, Chairman. In that case, I shall just seek a little clarification. There are 42 properties in Kendrick Court, is that correct?
Kendrick Court has 20 different addresses.
20 different addresses.
And there are
11
there are
parking spaces.
Yes.
And are there any public car parks within a reasonable walking distance, would you say?
No.
Thank you.
No.
Councillor White, you indicate.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to Mr. Hammond for his comments. As with the Oaklands flats, which came up when the large permit parking scheme was brought into Park Ward, Green councillors think that inclusion of flats into a permit parking zone should be considered case by case. And I think residents at Kendrick Court have made a very good case why they should be included into the scheme. I won't repeat everything that's been said, but the bit I want to repeat is that in Kendrick Road, there is a large amount of space, of capacity that cars could be parking in. So much capacity, in fact, that a traffic calming scheme had to be brought in to make up for the fact that no one was parking in the road, and it suddenly became very wide and very appealing for cars to drive quickly. So we've got people in need of somewhere to park, and we do have capacity on Kendrick Road. So first of all, I would like to support including Kendrick Court into the scheme. However, I've read the report. I can see that's not what is being recommended by officers, and so I assume that the Labour lead councillor is of a similar opinion. So plan B would be that if the Kendrick Court isn't to be included into the permit parking scheme, then as happened with the Oaklands flats, I think Kendrick Court should be looked at, or residents in Kendrick Court should be looked at favourably when applications for a discretionary parking permit come in. And with the Oaklands flats, every resident that wanted a discretionary permit got one. People have moved in since, applied, and they've got permits, and it works okay. We checked with the capacity in the scheme. It's a different scheme, but we checked, and there was capacity. It's worked fine. I think the same is true with this scheme and this this accommodation. So unless a Labour council or someone else is going to amend the recommended action, then I'll be voting against the recommended action, because I'd like to see Kendrick Court included into the permit parking zone.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Page.
Chair, if we were just dealing with a parking scheme that was solely on Kendrick Road, then the request might be one that is doable. But as Councillor White knows, but always chooses to ignore the fact, we operate area-based schemes precisely to enable some areas where no on-street parking is available to be accommodated. The fact that there is capacity at times on Kendrick Road is a recognition of the fact that we have a scheme that has been developed over the years to manage the allocation of permits. And the problem that we have with flats, and there are many on Kendrick Road, and I'm looking at our council website now, which identifies nearly a dozen flats blocks of flats along Kendrick Road, is that if we admit one, we would really have to admit all. And the numbers of permits that would then be issued could swamp not only Kendrick Road, but also surrounding areas. And we have to manage these schemes in a sensitive way if they are to retain credibility with local residents and also deliver the service that we are promising our residents in terms of enforcement. And Councillor White has referred to the Oaklands example, and that is in an area where we overnight improved the parking for local residents from what was effectively an anarchic free-for-all to a much better managed parking provision. And Oakland's residents have applied for discretionary permits, and I think in most cases have been granted them. And it's my view, and the proposition this evening is that residents in Kendrick Court, along with other flats on Kendrick Road, can be invited to make applications for discretionary permits that we will look at sympathetically, because there is space along Kendrick Road for managed allocations from those flats. But if we simply allow Kendrick Court in automatically, and Councillor Carnell's already pointed the fact that could be then automatically 42 permits could be issued just for one block of flats. And then add in, I'll just read you the list, I don't know all these places: Alpha House Flats, Bisham Court or Bispham, Brecon Court, Emmanuel House, Hazelwood, Kendrick Court, Selva Court, Sheringham Court, Tillingham House, Welbeck, and others. How would we say to them, oh, we're giving Kendrick Court full entitlement, but we're not going to include these others? We would have to. And that would then completely upend the scheme. So the reason we are, and I'm proposing that we continue with the current arrangement whereby we have an application tonight from a resident of Kendrick Court that we'll be coming on to in the closed session. And I hope we'll be able to look at that sympathetically, and other applications. But we do require residents to come forward and say why they need a parking permit. It's not just a case of arguing, we are flats, we only have a limited number of parking spaces, we should automatically be included. Unfortunately, that is not something that we can facilitate, because there is a limited amount of on-street space. And there's also the requirement on us then to define some sort of criterion as to why a block of flats with a certain number of parking spaces should be included. In some cases, nearly half the flats have got spaces. There's an onus on management companies as well in these flats to manage the allocation as well. Management companies are looking to abrogate their responsibilities in some cases. I don't know about the situation at Kendrick Court. It may be managed, it may not be. But we do know from Oakland's, and it's an interesting case, that some of those spaces were sold earlier on. And that isn't something that is particularly responsible either. So I think there's a good case, Chair, for sticking with the arrangement whereby the flats and their occupants are invited to submit a discretionary application, which we would then consider, hopefully grant. And I would make it clear that our procedures now do not require an annual reapplication. That person would then be able to renew the permit automatically online, unless of course the vehicle changed or a new person had applied. But on that basis, Chair, I would propose the recommended action on page 61. Thank you.
Thank you. Noted. Oh, Councillor Undy.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask Mr. Hammond, what year was Kendrick Court built?
1935.
1935. Okay, so this
at that time there were 750,000 cars in the whole of the UK.
Yes.
It's 28,000 now.
I think that's the point I was going to make. I think we're in this unfortunate scenario as the whole of Reading, especially the more central parts of Reading and the urban areas of Reading, is that our large town is not suitable for the amount of cars we have compared to when things were built. And this is, and I'm very sympathetic to the residents of Kendrick Court, and we're in a difficult scenario. I agree with what everyone has said, and I think the solution of going down discretionary parking permits with a very sympathetic view, I would say, is a way to approach this rather than trying to look at what is clearly a very large parking permit zone. Now, I'm not suggesting we review all our parking permit zones to make them a smaller zone, because I realise that would be quite a large undertaking, but I think the discretionary route, again, with a very sympathetic eye, would be the route forward here. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor, you wanted to come back?
I did that, Chairman. Thank you. I can understand why when a scheme starts, there is a desire to control the number of applicants to prevent oversubscription. The number of spaces is finite, so there can't be an unlimited issuing of permits. However, this scheme is well established now and isn't oversubscribed. The petition concerns a development which predates the scheme, is extremely limited parking, and as we've heard, there's no available alternative, no car parks in a reasonable distance. The rules are made for the guidance of wise men and the obedience of fools. When the rules don't reflect what's happening in the real world, we should be guided by the rules, not blindly led. The scheme isn't oversubscribed. There is space in the scheme, space which this development doesn't have. As we've heard, there's one parking space roughly per 2 properties. We're joining the Greens here. I find myself in the uncomfortable and unusual position of being with the Greens here, and we'll be voting against this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, taking all those aboard, and then we'll move to the recommended action in 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4. Does the committee in agreement? Can I vote? We'll take a vote. How many for? Agree? 1, 2, 3. Right. How many against? Right, 3 against, but it's carried. All in favour. Rest. Thank you. Thank you, Committee, Mr. Hammond. Thank you. You can stay or you can leave. Thank you, Mr. We'll move it to the next item 6, which I declared interest. I'll ask Kings Road Bus Lanes. I'll ask Councillor Matt Yo to take the chair, and I'll be outside after that.
Evening, everybody. Hi, I'm going to take over from Councillor Ayub, and James Penman is going to introduce the item.
Thank you, Chair. We're following the petition received at September's subcommittee meeting for a request for private hire vehicle use of a couple of bus lanes in Reading. That was bus lane on Duke Street and outbound in Kings Road. The report tonight recommends against that proposal, but also recommends considering, in general terms, the strategic use of bus lanes across Reading as part of a future piece of work. So this is bringing back the officer recommendation following that petition.
Thank you. I believe we've got petitioners that want to speak. So have we got Cameron Siddiqui? Yes. Yeah, do you want to speak first? Yes. And then we'll take, I think it's, is it just Mr. Siddiq that's speaking? Yeah, but if are you all speaking in favour of the same item? Yes. Yeah, so you would have 5 minutes in total. So either one of you needs to speak, or you would each get roughly maybe 1.5 minutes, and one of you would have to, hand over to the other one. So but yeah, so you get a total of 5 minutes for the two of you, not 5 minutes each. Yeah. So are you saying you want to speak against? Yeah, so you needed to agree this between you guys. No, you get 5 minutes as a total, I'm afraid. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, I haven't been informed that, so it's 5 minutes between you.
So, sorry, Chair, it's at the Chair's discretion, I think, so you could give them more if you wanted to.
I could, but I'm not. I mean, I'm not trying to be difficult. That's the rules that. That's based on what the Constitution is. I mean, that's what we're doing. I'm ignoring Councillor White.
Well, if you,
yeah, I mean. You're not helping. Thank you. So you get 5 minutes in total. So you could eat into your colleague's time, but you realise that, I can see.
Yep, absolutely. That's
no
fine.
worries. So if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself,
okay,
and then speak.
Yes, my name's Cameron Sadiq, and I'm calling out following the petition we put through for the bus lane access in the last meeting. We read your reports. We read the reply. Historically, Reading Borough Council have merrily paid lip service to our trade team, even whilst mostly ignoring us in reviews and our consultations. Whereas Reading Private Eye have been asking for extension of bus lane usage to include us since the late 90s. Initially, the reason was given that there was no directive from the national government on expanding the bus lanes to private hire, even though none was needed. In answering this obstacle, the Private Hire Association contacted the National Government Transport Department in 2008. We were informed that the national government did not need to give a directive on bus lanes since there was no bus lanes on the national highway, i.e. the M4, and that was by the local bylaw issued to allow or not to allow. It was also then learnt by Private Hire Association back in 2008 historically that Reading was the first authority to bring in bus lanes in the 60s by passing a local bylaw and created a first bus lane in the Bath Road. Even with the above information, Private Hire has mostly been fobbed off. Only in 2013, where there was a close election, did the Labour group feel compelled to expand the bus lane in the King's Road to include private hire. Since then, no studies have concluded that there is a major impact on the rest of the transport system or in industry in running services, rather than an improvement in providing services for those who live in east of Reading coming in to use rail air or trains. It makes no sense not to allow bus lanes which reduce time of travel and encourage passengers to use other modes of public transport to get rail air. The other fact that both private hire operators and South and Reading Borough has lost several hundred drivers to neighbouring councils, i.e. South Oxfordshire, who license Hackney Carriage as saloon cars. The owners of these Hackney Carriage vehicles then come into Reading using our bus lanes at the expense of Reading private hire drivers and operators. It must be noted we also pay a higher fee to Reading than them. Both licenses and operators' fee are higher with Reading than neighbourhood South Oxfordshire and West Berkshire put together, which really begs the question, what are Reading private hire paying for? Is it so that they can be penalised for working under Reading licenses? A previous transport policy review, which was paid for Reading Borough Council and carried out by the University of Reading on transport, clearly concluded that Reading private hire should be allowed to use bus lanes. However, we were mostly ignored again. Reading operators, along with council school transport, Reading are now unable to fulfil their obligations for special needs children to be transported due to lack of drivers and time on journeys, which in the past took around 20 minutes, which is now taken over an hour or so, leading to us receiving major complaints. We believe that opening the bus lanes will make it easier to provide transport to both passengers and school children and reduce pollution and the quality of air, like previously mentioned in our last report. Reading Private has newer vehicles and are now more efficient than the black cabs, yet our fees are higher than them, and they also get more facilities than us, such as ranks and use of bus lane. Finally, in the view of the mere fact that more developments of houses are going up in and around Reading, without provision of schools, surgeries and local services, we are seeing an increase in the car use, creating traffic gridlocks. Private hire should be given access to bus lanes so as we can reduce time travels and encourage passengers to use public transport more. Further to that, we have evidence submitted in the last week. We have received evidence from Southampton City Council, also Portsmouth City Council and South Oxfordshire, who have actually confirmed to us, the licensing department, that their private hires can use all their bus lanes. The population of Reading current stands is 348,000. The population of South Oxfordshire is 690,000. They allow all their private hires and Hackney carriages to use all their bus lanes. In our previous application, we only asked for 2, which have been, we believe, have been turned down.
You've got 1 minute left.
I will summarise it in this way. If it's turned down, that private hires cannot use the bus lanes, and we're only talking about 2, Kings Road and Duke Street here. The resultant is that firm owners may take the decision not to be licensed by Reading Borough Council. You would lose income. They will be licensed by adjoining local authorities and can then use the bus lane. The decision to not allow them, it doesn't make any sense. Other local authorities have done it. This increase in traffic, where from? The reality is that since the pandemic, there are now less taxis operating because less drivers are out there. They can't recruit and so on. So that this issue about increased use is just a nonsense. You have populations in Southampton and Oxford, far greater populations. They've been allowed to use it. South Oxfordshire could come and use the bus lanes, but your own licensed taxis can't use that. Doesn't make any sense.
You're out of time, but I think you just about finished.
Just one last thing I would say, as I say, Reading Borough Council, as a consequence of not allowing this to happen, we even suggested on a trial basis 6 months. The Taxi Association in Reading are quite prepared to fund some of the cost of whatever the statutory implement being put in place or whatever new signage. They're prepared to meet some of the costs of doing that if that's a problem. But the reality is that you could then end up losing income because taxi drivers will then not license in Reading.
Thank you. So thank you for speaking. Do you want to stay there for a minute while we give councillors a chance to maybe ask questions or comments? Have I got any indications? Do you want to go ahead, Councillor White?
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Is it comments rather than questions?
Yes.
Oh, questions. Okay. Sorry, I've got a comment, so I'll be quiet. Well, actually, I do have one question.
There were nobody else indicated. Yes. Yeah, but not on this item. But nobody indicated when I asked. No, I mean from the public. I'm not sure what you mean. Yes, but I didn't know that. I asked who the public speakers were so that I could know that, and nobody indicated. Yes. Okay, so we've actually got speakers from the RTA as well. Yeah, but he wanted to speak with these two on the same item. Fine. Okay, fine. So what you're saying, that we're supposed to take that next before anybody else? Right. So we've got a speaker from the RTA that wants to speak now. Yeah. Yes, and that's what I tried to say to them at the beginning, but they wanted to. So you want to speak? Yeah. So I asked this, and they all wanted to speak on the same item in favour of it. Yes, which is what I'm asking. Right. Yeah, I was not notified of this. No, you. Have we got? Yeah. So we've got Kamran Siddique, Mansour Hussain and Sadiq Iqbal. And they're the people that have got in touch with, with Richard. Right. So are you here, Asid Rashid?
Yes.
Right, fine. Do you want to, you've got 5 minutes. No, it's 5 minutes for, 5 minutes against. I'm being told that he did. He's not dictating to me. So do you want to start?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My name's Asif Rashid. I'm Chair of the Reading Taxi Association. Basically, we're at the moment, we believe that in isolation, we're against this petition and the request for these 2 bus lanes. Whilst we appreciate some of their concerns, in particular to South Oxfordshire, we believe that sometime soon, as soon as possible, there should be a review of all the bus lanes and their usages and how we move forward with that, with having a local strategic bus lane review, which we will be part of. In essence, I'll be honest with you, we don't like the fact that South Oxfordshire use the bus lanes in Reading. They shouldn't be allowed to. You know, they're licensed by a different authority. Vast majority of them tend to be working in Reading, which does put the Reading private hire to a disadvantage. So on that basis, yes, I can see that. But I believe that there needs to be a complete review of the bus lanes. And I believe just like the bus lanes in Kings Road and also the bus gateway in Minster Street, Gun Street, which are restricted to authorised vehicles only, that we need to be going down that road. And, you know, if we decide to allow, but predominantly bus lanes are for public hire, public transport. Private hire, they're private transport. It's not public transport, you know, as it says, private hire. So, you know, we're against this request for the 2 bus lanes. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Councillor White, you'd like to speak?
Yeah, I had a question for the speakers. Would Mansour Hussain like to add anything? That's a question.
That's not a question.
It is.
It's not. No, that's asking him if he wants to carry on speaking.
That's a Labour councillor question. That's Richard Stainthorpe.
Richard Stainthorpe's been gone from the council for a long time.
You've got to learn from the masters. It's a question. He's on the speakers list. Yes, he is. He did. Councillor Yeo said he's on the speakers list.
He didn't. It's irrelevant. If you haven't got a comment to make, then that's not a question.
I've got a comment, but I think we're doing questions.
Yeah, Chair, as is quite obvious, this raises some passions, but I think we need to bring it back to the name on the tin. This is use of bus lanes. Reading, and I would make this point to our guests this evening who've spoken, Reading has the most extensive network of bus lanes outside of London, with one of the highest dependencies on public transport. The cities you've quoted have a minimal operation of public transport by comparison. Their bus lanes are not used anything like as extensively. And certainly South Oxfordshire is no model to quote in terms of promoting public transport of any sort. And the fact is that we are looking to spend nearly £25 million worth of bus service improvement money, subject to the Department for Transport giving us the final go-ahead anytime now, in terms of fares initiatives, in terms of further investment in bus priority measures, all intended to drive up public transport use in the borough. and we have to therefore manage our bus lanes in a way that maintains the flow and regularity and frequency of the buses. And that, above all, is what bus lanes are about. And therefore, when we allow use by other vehicles, it has to be on the basis of promoting and enhancing overall public transport. And hackney carriages are a form recognised of public transport. Private hire is not. It is a service to the public, but it is not public transport. You cannot flag down a private hire vehicle, even though some drivers try to do that occasionally illegally in Reading. Hackney carriages can be stopped and flagged down. They are a form of public transport. But notwithstanding that, we don't allow hackney carriages into every single bus lane in this borough. And indeed, our mass rapid transit corridors don't allow taxis, hackney carriages in. So they don't have a universal use either. But the recommendation we have this evening about a future strategic piece of work is necessary, because if we achieve the increase in public transport use that the bus service improvement money is intended to deliver, we will have more buses operating in Reading at a higher frequency with better loadings, and we will therefore have a better idea as to whether there is any scope for any extension of the use of bus lanes. But that must always be the guiding principle in terms of assessing the future use. Colleagues have referenced the presence of South Oxfordshire hackney carriages. I recognise that. That's a legal anomaly. It's not something that we have the power to control at the present time, although we are on record as an authority in wanting to see only vehicles licensed by Reading Borough Council having access to our bus lanes, whether that be the Kings Road bus lane, which is currently allowed for private hire, or any others that we might consider. But the legality of that is still something that has to be fully worked through. So, Chair, I would commend the recommended action to the subcommittee this evening. And I would just, by the way, correct one of the earlier speakers. Our first bus lane was in Reading in 1967, but it's the Kings Road bus lane, not Bath Road. And they have grown and extended ever since. And one of the reasons Reading Buses is the successful and preeminent bus operator is that it's been able to rely on that extensive network of bus lanes. And we, as an authority, are determined to defend that and enhance that provision. So the piece of strategic work that is referenced in here will build hopefully on the success of those bus lanes and will review access to them. That's as best as we can offer at the present time. Chair, I would move those recommendations.
Thank you. Right, okay. Councillor Moore, sorry.
Sorry, you're going to call my first name, weren't you? Yeah. Thank you, Chair. I'm both sympathetic and unsympathetic to parts of this petition. First of all, I agree with the gentleman who spoke against. I would love to see a full review of the bus lanes, and I realise that is also a recommendation report. I think that's a very sensible idea and could indeed tease out things from multiple stakeholders, including multiple taxi organisations and drivers. I'm unsympathetic to the Duke Street and London Street bus lane. I don't understand that one. I'm also unsympathetic to the claim of needing to take VIP clients somewhere. I'm not too sympathetic to that. However, it's a question probably for officers, or maybe even for councillors who've been here longer than I have, because I don't know the historical knowledge, but why on King's Road do we have one side with access to private hire, the other side not access to private hire? That's not something I quite understand. It doesn't make any sense in my mind, but I'm sure there's a good reason for it.
Thank you. Councillor White, you had a question.
It wasn't a question this time, it was just a comment. Thank you very much, Councillor Yeo.
Are you sure you want to make a comment?
Yes, please. First of all, I'd like to thank all of the speakers, especially those from the public gallery. Unfortunately, in Reading, it's a confusing picture of who can use what bus lane when you're looking at Hackney carriages and private hire drivers and where they are licensed. As the petition talks about and the report talks about, Kings Road inbound can be used, but Kings Road outbound can't be used by private hire drivers. I remember supporting a petition from private hire drivers around a decade ago for this to be looked into. So I can feel their pain that we're here again, and it's just the same old kicking it into the long grass, and it feels like it's never gonna go anywhere. I disagree with Councillor Page on a number of things, but in particular, I think that private hire is a form of public transport. It's moving people around the town. It's useful, and we should be supporting our private hire drivers. Green councillors would at the very least like a timescale for the review, which I didn't spot in the report and I've not heard anyone mention. Otherwise, we're just going to vote against it because the recommended action just kicks this off into the long grass yet again.
Thank you. Any more comments?
I find this sort of line of argument really poor in a way, because we're clearly in the process of trying to get through a bid and finalise a bid for improved bus services. That is the purpose, the primary purpose of the bus lane. Until we get that bid through, we won't know how many extra buses we'll be able to lay on, what are the improvements of service that we'll be able to do. We won't be able to assess the impact of that until we get that through from central government. Once we've got that through, that is the time that we should be looking at for trying to evaluate what the impact of this could or may not be. But the priority is to make sure that people can get into Reading quickly by bus. And I'm really shocked and surprised that the Green Party is opposing this and saying that they're going to support extra cars, even though the report says that with the low profile of these vehicles, that it's more dangerous for pedestrians. So that is going to put off more people from cycling, more people from walking. So I'm really disappointed in that, and I would support the recommendations.
Thank you. James, you wanted to speak? Excuse me.
Thank you very much for the comments. I'm not in a position where I can defend some of the historic restrictions that we have in Reading. I'll hold my hands up. However, for me, that's the exact reason why we do need to look at this strategically and holistically and bring them all into alignment. And to follow what Councillor Hornsby-Smith has said, we're in a fantastic position where we're seeing a complete step change in the amount of funding that's going into active travel and into public transport. And so in receiving that funding, that is really steering us now into getting the strategies in place and doing this work. So while I don't have a timescale for the review, it is going to follow the outcome of the BSIP funding and so on, and we'll be moving to deliver these positive changes for Reading.
Thank you. Can we take a vote now on the recommended actions, please? Can I have votes in favour? And votes against? Abstentions? Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for speaking. And we need to move on to the next item. Can I suggest that the committee itself takes a couple of minutes until we get Mohammed back?
Chair, can I grab a glass of water, please?
Done something good in a previous life to...
You can ask the new chair.
Sorry?
Keep it coming, I'm enjoying it.
Oh, never mind.
Thank you. Are we ready to go? Okay, quiet. Can we back in the chair now? So, hello, quiet, Chair James. Right. Thank you, Matt, for doing that item. Right. The next item is item 7 on the agenda, a request for traffic management measures. Can I ask James to introduce this?
Thank you, Chair. So this is a regular report to the subcommittee and follows the last one in March. So it updates the list of requests that we received for traffic management measures. So as per the last report, it's broken down into a number of appendix documents. So the first appendix are completely new requests for the list, with officer recommendations on whether they should be retained onto the master list or removed. Appendix 2 brings back anything that was formerly on the master list where we're proposing amendment. The majority of these, I'm pleased to say, are where we've received SIL funding, local SIL funding allocations, and are developing those schemes. However, there are a couple of others where there have been perhaps substantial proposed changes to that request. Sorry, Appendix 3 is the master list, and Appendix 4 finally is just some supporting documentation which has been very helpfully provided by ward councillors in support of one of the proposed changes in Appendix 2 that relates to the Amersham Road area 20-mile-an-hour zone.
Thank you, Mr. Penn. So, can I take these as items? First one in Abbey Ward, pedestrian crossing, Councillor Page. Okay. Battle Ward, one-way plug, Conwith Road, Councillor Hacker.
Yeah, happy for that to go forward for consultation and design, etc.
You're okay with that one? Okay. Then we have 2 in Caversham. I'm looking at the councillors.
Yep.
Yep. Are you up with the agreements there?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. 2, 3. Then we have item 6, which is Church and Redlands, 20 mile. Okay. Sorry? Oh, sorry, I was jumping. Yeah, Caversham Heights. Yeah, traffic calming.
Yes,
Kenmore Road. Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. Happy for that to stay on the list.
Yeah, happy for that one. Okay, item 6 is the Church and Redlands. Councillor Andrew Smith.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree with the officer recommendations that not to look at the full length of supplying this. My concern about this would be the impact on North Court Avenue, which we're just trying to traffic calm now. If you traffic calm the whole of Shinfield Road, all you'll do is you'll divert traffic on a rat run through North Court Avenue. So I'm very pleased that you're recommending, something of looking at the 2 ends, the two sets of shops, and trying to improve safety there. I'd also like to mention that we need to reassess this in the light of the cycle lane that's just going in there, which we're getting very positive feedback on, and I'm very happy to report that. But also when it comes to the North Court Avenue bit later on, I think it's another appendix. I'll mention it now so I don't have to mention it again. I'd like to suggest replacing Ennerdale Road with Sycamore Road as the possible extension to that to consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I see no more indication. Let's take those are both, yeah. Okay, Northcote and Southcote 20 mile zone, Shillingford Road, Honey End Lane. Councillor Ennis.
Southcote and Northcote councillors will always support environmentally friendly and green policies where possible to support residents in safety in the area. So therefore, we are in favour.
Thank you, Councillor Ennis. Next one is Northcote and Tyler's pedestrian crossing, Usk Road near school.
Yes, I support that one. I was want to raise that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Northcote 20 mile zone, Cockney Hill. I think I've got agreement with the councillors there. They've written back, so yeah, we can take that forward. Next two we have in Redlands is pedestrian crossing, Craven Road. Redland, can agree with that, and also pedestrian crossing there at the London Road and Junction. Next one. Traffic calming on Early Road. Yeah. Right, fine, thank you. We'll agree with that. Thames Ward, pedestrian crossing, Grosbeck Road near the junction of St John's Road. Yeah. Thank you, Councillor. Next, we have three in Tyler's, pedestrian crossing, Church Lane, Park Lane.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The only one I want to raise is item 16 is actually the same as an item on Appendix 3, so the two should be merged. Okay. It's the same as Appendix 3, item 83, which is on page 129, and they give slightly different recommendations from the officers. So I'd like to see a clarified recommendation from officers as they say slightly different things. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor James. Okay, agreed. Thank you. We're moving on to Caversham, 20 miles. Matt?
Yeah, we proposed this, and as James Penman mentioned in the introduction, that this is one of the alterations that we'd like to suggest. By decoupling it from the lower Caversham 20 mile an hour zone, it will be cheaper and potentially easier to deliver. And the survey that we carried out, which I think is one of the appendices, we found a good amount of support from the residents in the area.
Thank you, Councillor. Next we have is Caversham Heights, speeding, calming, Upper Woodcote Road. Yeah, I'll agree with that. Carry that forward. We have traffic calming in Cawley, Shore and entire road. I had a response with the councillors. Yep, that's carried forward. Cates Grove 20 mile calming. Yes, agree with that one. Yeah. And we have multi-one Abbey and Thames cycle access, Station Road subway. Yeah, that's been dealt with. Yeah. Thank you. Caversham and Thames, 20 mile radius. Agree that one? Yep. And I think this was Church and Redlands already. Councillor Andrews done that one. Northcote and Battle, 20 miles. Is it to be moved?
Yeah, because we've got still money for that now, so that's going ahead.
Thank you, Councillor. Tyler's pedestrian crossing, Chapel Hill.
Yes, please retain that. Thank you.
Okay. Whitley pedestrian crossing, Imperial Way, close to the new development. Yep.
Yeah, it's been removed, isn't it? It's got still funding. Just to say this, as I said to James, Imperial Way and Basingstoke Road, it should read us. Thank you.
All right. So we have Appendix 3. I'm sure you have read the papers. We normally take these. Can these be noted? Appendix 3, councillors? All right, thank you. Yeah. Right. So, item 4. Yeah, can we move the Amersham Road one? Yeah, dealt with that one. Yeah. So, can we move to item 8 then. This is the evaluation of a local sales scheme, Redlands. Can I ask Mr. Penman just give a brief update?
Thank you, Chair. So following the implementation of a local SILT-funded scheme to enhance the existing traffic calming features in certain areas of the 20-mile-an-hour zone around Redlands, we've provided a report to provide an evaluation, both speed data and the findings of independent road safety audits that were conducted on the site, as well as acknowledging some of the feedback that we've received locally about the scheme, and providing officer recommendations on the next steps for that scheme. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a speaker on this item as well. Can I ask Will Cross, Councillor Will Cross, to come forward?
Thank you, Chair. I'm grateful for the opportunity to address the committee on a matter that has been raised by a number of residents. I'm particularly grateful to the Reading Cycle Campaign, whose chair circulated an extremely helpful briefing note on this matter a few months ago. The context of this, as mentioned in remarks by Councillor Page earlier, is obviously the police and government's refusal to devolve speed enforcement powers and therefore the reliance on built environmental features to reduce speed. And I really welcome the fact that speeds have reduced on this stretch of road, as evidenced in point 4.4 of the report. However, indeed, speeds at the 85th percentile, I think it was, are still higher than the prescribed 20 miles an hour. It's clear from feedback that there are some concerns with aspects of this scheme. I won't cover them all in detail here due to the constraints of time. But I want to concentrate firstly on the chicane at the junction of Redlands Road and Allcroft Road. So some of the problems here, which is acknowledged in the report, have been due to bad behaviour by road users, in particular the racing along and slowing down between the speed humps on Allcroft Road itself, and road rage incidents basically at the width restriction at the junction. So I visited the site with a local resident and councillor, Barnet Ward, recently, and even in the short time we were there, we witnessed a number of concerning incidents. The chicane means that cars coming out of Allcroft Road and turning right can either cross over into the left lane, wait at the restriction before pulling out into the right lane and then going round, or in practice what we saw, cars driving out of Allcroft Road in the wrong lane, swinging round the entire turning on the right. And this doesn't feel safe for them or for road users coming down the hill in the same lane going the other way. And we also witnessed a road rage incident against a cyclist who was in fact using the junction correctly. I'm very conscious of financial constraints limiting the potential for tweaks here, but I do strongly feel that some tweaks do need to be made at this junction. And the report makes some suggestions on how to do this. So I would welcome the committee giving consideration to how this may best be achieved whilst keeping speeds low. My other concern is with the build outs down Redlands Road, the little bits of curb kind of coming out. According to the report, these were not the products that were initially agreed, similar to the ones used on Kendrick, as these were sold out. The products used there are set away from the curb, and so as long as cars aren't parked, cyclists can cycle straight down the edge. However, the features used on Redlands Road go right up to the edge of the curb, meaning cyclists get forced out into the middle of the highway. I oppose the build outs which go right up to the curb and would like to see these be adjusted to make room for cyclists or replaced by features similar to ones on Kendrick Road, as I don't consider the current ones to really be in line with the cycling strategy. This is a key cycling route from Shinfield Road down to the town centre, and we should be making it easier, not harder, for cyclists. So I think we've seen a real step change in cycling provision in the town recently, but I think there's still more work to do to ensure that cyclists and their needs are considered as an integral part of such schemes going forward. So I'd like to thank the committee for your consideration to my feedback, and to once again reiterate my welcoming of the speed reductions, improvements of safety here, but also the need for some tweaks to ensure, subject to funding, that we have a safe and most effective scheme. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cross. The subcommittee has questions. Yeah, Councillor.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for what you've told us. This is a road I drive down on occasion. What you said about the junction at Allcroft Road, I agree with. I was surprised you haven't mentioned the step out right at the top, sort of between Marlborough Road and where you've got a bus stop, then you've got the step out, which is protecting a row of parking spaces. At times of heavy traffic, that can create gridlock, because if you've got a queue of cars waiting to go up to the lights, not everyone has the decency to leave a space for oncoming traffic, so that can tail back into the junction. Perhaps you'd comment on that. Thank you.
Thank you. I note the comments made. There were a number of aspects of the scheme to which feedback was provided and was noted in the report by officers. I picked the two which I did. Obviously, there are some other ones which concerns were raised about. What I would say is, for some of the build outs that are down there in terms of width restrictions, they are sort of bookending the parking bays. And I think one of the things is, even if there are cars, if there are cars in there, you have quite a similar effect in terms of having to go out and go around them. What I would say in particular about the one at the junction of Redlands Road and Allcroft Road is that as we noted when we did our site visit, that the width restriction goes out substantially further than the parking bays. But I do know your comments, and obviously you've raised those with the committee.
Thank you, Councillor Cross. We'll take a seat now. I'll have the second speaker come forward, please. Mr. Joe Edwards. Right, good evening, sir. Just state your name and who you are for the committee.
I'm Joe Edwards, and I'm chair of the Reading Cycle Campaign.
Thank you, Mr.
I'd like to commend the last speaker. I didn't realise that this site visit had taken place, and I wish I could have been there. I'm wearing two hats. The first is as representative of the Reading Cycle Campaign. The campaign's overriding concern is for the safety of all who cycle in the area, and also to see that any monies that are spent on road and infrastructure improvements are spent wisely and to their best effect. My colleague John Lee had prepared a short presentation on the technical limitations and errors of the scheme, but as these are all detailed in the reports that we sent to Councillor Page and been referenced by the previous speaker a few weeks ago, I trust you're all aware of our concerns in this area and the technical problems that we have highlighted. However, I want to make a larger point. As someone who has cycled in the area for over 40 years and has in recent times spoken to many others who cycle the local roads, including yesterday the head of safety at the university, I can confidently say that nothing in the scheme makes me feel safer on my bike, and many things make me feel more unsafe. There is one aspect of the scheme which I believe is a potential death trap for cyclists, and we've heard a little bit about it here. Whoever designed the scheme either did not know, or maybe thought it not relevant, that Redlands Road goes up quite a steep hill. To arrange things such that downhill traffic get effective priority means that vehicles are now coming down past the end of Allcroft and down past the hospital faster than ever. I see this every day from my study window. Dog walking neighbours commented within days of the scheme being implemented that someone would get killed unless changes were made. There have been too many near misses. We've heard that on the site visit you saw them, and I've seen some myself. As I said in my part of the report, I have cycled safely in the area for over 40 years, But since the scheme was put into place, I have now personally had several near misses. Most are due to vehicles moving to the centre of the road to straddle the speed cushions without slowing. One of these, sadly, was a Reading bus indeed. I no longer cycle up Redlands Road as I regard it as too dangerous, and I see many more cyclists using the pavements. Surely this is not what the scheme was intended to achieve. The other hat I wear is as a local resident. In the 43 years I have lived on Redlands Road, nothing has caused my wife and I also speak for other local residents, more disturbance and distress than the noise made by vehicles as they pass over and often hit the speed cushions and bumps. We get woken in the middle of the night by cars scraping the speed hump on Morgan Road, these full width savage speed humps which have been complained about by other local residents. And even with the treble glazing we have in our study, the noise from heavy vehicles such as the demolition trucks going down Redlands Road at full speed, bouncing off the cushions, is very intrusive. The noise is very intrusive. We never used to notice this noise in the past, but it's now a constant intrusion into our lives. As a taxpayer, I'm concerned that this costly, badly designed, and to my view, ineffective scheme will be held up as some sort of improvement for road safety. At the very least, the part south of Allcroft Road must be rethought before someone gets killed, and the vicious humps on Morgan Road replaced with ones that cause less noise and are less intrusive than others. I would hope that in future, any future schemes would benefit from the involvement of local people with local knowledge, and especially the involvement of the local cycling community. Can I suggest that safety auditors and lead councillors cycle any schemes before they're approved? Can I also suggest that the council carry out proper evaluation of the impact of effectiveness of what they implement, not just a quick look at what the 5% speed reduction? Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Barnett-Ward, you indicated.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to clarify for Mr Edwards, there wasn't a formal site visit. I'd cycled to Redlands to do something else, and Councillor Cross, who is also a cyclist, said, come and look at this, and encouraged me to come and stand with him for 10, 15 minutes. We stood and watched, and we didn't see a single car coming out of Allcroft Road using the pullover correctly. So the point was very, very well made. I'm very glad he invited me over there, but there wasn't a formal site visit.
Perhaps the council ought to arrange some formal site visits and have a proper look at what's going on.
Chair, I mean, Councillor Cross has painted a very, very clear picture for councillors. I was pleased to go and see it myself, but he's been a very strong advocate. I'll put that as that's sort of the yes.
Thank you, Councillor. So taking all those points aboard, everything, can we move to the, sorry, Councillor White.
Thanks, Chair. I think Councillor Page might want to say something in a minute as well. The way his hand was moving, but I'll go first. So yeah, thank you, Chair, and thanks to everyone that's spoken from across opposite and the public gallery. I have also been out to have a look, and I totally agree that the build outs at the junction of Allcroft and Redlands Road aren't working, that they are dangerous, and yeah, I would definitely support seeing them removed. I also got talking to a resident and had the pleasure of listening to cars banging, thumping and clattering over one of the fairly abrupt speed humps on Morgan Road. So I can hear your pain literally. I acknowledge the report says they're designed and built correctly, but you only have to stand next to one for a minute for a few cars to go over and clatter into the speed hump. And these aren't cars that are speeding; these are cars that are travelling below the 20 miles an hour speed limit considerably in some instances, it seems. So yeah, I would reiterate having a look at how these are working and questioning if they are working as they should be. It's disappointing we've got a scheme from the council about improving road safety, and at the same time we've got Reading Cycle Campaign raising some very strong concerns, which I'm sure all of those Labour councillors who were only 2 seconds ago trumpeting their cycling credentials, I would hope they are listening loud and clear to what the Cycle Campaign are saying, and I'd hope that there could be closer work with the Cycle Campaign in future, so we've got a scheme that both parties and people in general agree is good to go in, and when we're not there 6 months, a year, 2 years later, tearing it to bits. So with the recommended action in the report, it talks about taking the Redlands Road build out away when funds become available and replacing it with speed humps. I hope that transport planners are able to work closely with the Cycle Campaign and address some of their very real and legitimate concerns about exactly how speed cushions, speed humps, speed tables are used, so they both slow cars down and create a pleasant, safe environment for cyclists to be using. I think the recommended action moves us forward a little bit, so I'll be voting for the recommended action, but I would definitely note there are other elements of the scheme that I'd like to see revisited at some point in the future to improve the scheme for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Page.
Chair, can I thank Councillor Cross and Joe Edwards for their comments. I would remind colleagues that we consulted extensively, not only informally but formally, about these proposals. Some of them were a nature of a compromise as a result of objections from local residents to elements of the proposed traffic calming. We had extensive representations, both for and against elements of the scheme. And the problem with physical measures is that humps in any shape or form will create noise from traffic that speeds over them. That is the nature of humps, and the complaint that Mr. Edwards has made is echoed in many other parts of the town. And hence the frustration I expressed in my answer at the very beginning about traffic calming along Northumberland Avenue. We've put in physical measures, but what that only gets us so far. Ultimately, we need camera enforcement to deter the idiots who willfully speed and cause you the sort of inconvenience that you have identified. If people travelled at the right speed, there would not be noise associated with the provision of speed humps. But there are motorists, don't look quizzically, that's a fact, Councillor White. And the fact is that we need additional measures to ensure compliance with the 20 mph zones. So we can only go so far with physical measures. There clearly are elements of the scheme that need reviewing and amending, and the report has identified some, but I think, along with other members of this subcommittee, would like to see further work and meetings and discussions held around the points that Councillor Cross has raised and points that Mr. Edwards has raised, because the original driving force, if you pardon the pun, for the scheme was a speed reduction package of speed reduction measures. It was not primarily designed, although we consulted with the Cycle Campaign, as a cycling initiative. And there were many conflicting pressures that we had to deal with through the process. I'm not disagreeing with the points you've made, by the way, I'm just explaining the original motivation for the scheme. And as Councillor Cross rightly identified, the speed survey comparisons do show a reduction, some quite significant reductions in speeding on the roads, notwithstanding some of the idiots that choose to ignore the restrictions. I would like to propose a slight addendum to the recommendations, because 2.2 rightly says that we need to identify funding and then go out to consult. But there is consultation proposed on one specific element, and I'm suggesting that we take the opportunity, whilst we are looking at the funding issue, to have a further consultation or further meeting between our officers and local councillors and representatives of the cycle campaign to review those additional comments that have been made, and then bring that back for a further update report to the subcommittee, so that if we are minded to make further alterations, those can all be rolled in together in one specific consultation. So it doesn't delay what is recommended here, but it inserts that additional meeting with, as I say, ward councillors, the cycle campaign and our officers to further discuss and address the understandable concerns that have been raised. The build out points is one that I share, and it's something that does require addressing. And now that we have, since this scheme was first conceived, we've now received additional funding for active travel and the promotion and installation of cycling priority measures, and we're in a strong position to bid for further funds from central government, such as being there recognition of the work that we're doing along Shinfield Road, we'll be doing along Bath Road, and we are in a strong position to bid for further funding, not only in this area but elsewhere. So, Chair, I would move the recommended actions with that addendum of a further meeting and a report back to us prior to the consultation, or to confirm then the statutory consultation on the scheme. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Page. Councillor Ennis, you indicated.
Thank you. Yeah, I won't keep it long. Certainly support the recommended actions and support the amendment. And just to remind Councillor White, it was a Labour councillor, Cross, who has been diligent in his observations in the area that he represents to see the problems here, and I really welcome him, and I welcome working with the cycling campaign 100%. The issue, you know, that I think humps have got, because we've had the same issue to a certain extent in Southcote, when a huge pressure from residents, many of whom are not pro cycling to be honest, were worried about 20 mile per hour, 30 mile per hour speeding traffic on Southcote Lane. Hugely concerning. You know, one day there'll be an accident and you'll pay for it. We lobbied then to get humps, proper humps. I'll tell you, they are humps. And if you hit them humps, Councillor White, at 30 miles per hour, your sump will go. If you hit them at 20, you'll know about it, but it won't be as serious. And in time, people have got to understand the two humps with the zebra crossings, you know, Councillor Page, and the locals understand it and they slow down. The whole point is to, you know, you're shaking your head. Of course, I'm, you know, you're 4x4, you know, you like to hit it hard, don't you? But, you know, and that's what happens. The trouble is, cyclists would have a problem, wouldn't they, in many ways? But the humps, the other set of humps, which we've got in other areas, and the New Lane Hill, where you can go in between, which is supported for cyclists, then allow traffic, certain you know, motorists like Councillor White to go in the middle and go through it. Do you know what I mean? And that's a real problem that we've got with humps. So it's sometimes you win, sometimes you lose for cyclists. Sometimes I'd have to admit, and it's how we can write that. So I would very much welcome a consultation on that and getting the right type of hump that cyclists would be supportive of, and that would also be effective. It's a massive conundrum, but I'm sure we can work together to try and make that and eradicate that. And let's not forget, it's not necessarily roads that cause accidents. And as a cyclist who's now become a pedestrian, I'll be honest, because of problems, it's a minority of motorists that do not care. They do not care. And we have to do something about that. How we do that, I do not know, but we have to do it somehow. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ennis. Councillor Hornsby-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. For a couple of years, I sat on the East Reading Safer Neighbourhoods Forum, and we begged for there to be enforcement of the 20-mile-an-hour limits around Redlands, and we got nowhere. We really pushed it. I took it, before I was elected, I took it to Councillor Page and he checked it out with the police, and the police came back at a senior level and said, if you want a 20-mile-an-hour limit, you've got to put in physical measures. And that was at a senior level. So we got absolutely nowhere in that. And that's the context of what this scheme is trying to do. This is an area which has got a lot of schools, a lot of school children, and the priority was to reduce the speed there. And I'm delighted to say, broadly speaking, that is what this scheme has delivered. Yes, there are some issues with it and some improvements that can be made, and I fully endorse exactly what Councillor Cross was saying, and also the speaker from the Cycle Forum. We need to take those on board. A couple of other comments that I'd like to make is that, yes, it would be nice to have lower humps, but the lower you get your humps, the higher you get the speed. And the second point is this, that if you have speed cushions on average, and I know this because I've got an MSc in transport planning, speed cushions on average lower speed by 3 to 4 miles an hour. Okay, that's what they do. They're not ideal. But in this area, we're right by a hospital. Would you like your ambulance going over a hump? So clearly not. That is not the idea, and that is why the specific scheme was designed really carefully in order to accommodate that. Now I know that clashes with some of the comments that you were making, Mr. Edwards, about cars going into the centre to try and avoid that. But that was the reasoning behind that. So there are a lot of people, and in my ward, Church Ward, there are a lot of people that would say, get rid of the scheme altogether. We'd like to be able to speed down Kendrick Road and Redlands Road, etc., as we always used to. What a pain that this scheme gets in the way. I am delighted that they are delayed. I'm delighted because it slows them down, and that is exactly what this scheme was intending to do. So there are a lot of issues that are up for grabs here, and Councillor Page has said, yeah, we need to think about these and consult over these in a little bit more detail than is put forward in the report. So I support what Councillor Page is saying, go for the recommendations, but also support the scheme in general because it has delivered lower speeds, and that is a good thing.
Thank you, Councillor. I don't see any more indications. So can we move to the recommended action? Do the committee agree? And we think? No. Thank you. Move to the next item, item 9. This is Cycle Forum, a subcommittee. Note the Cycle Forum minutes held on the 2nd of August 2022. Can this be noted? Yeah, agree. Thank you. Right. The next bit is private and confidential under the agreement. Can I ask the member of publics to? All right. Yeah. Item 10 is exclusive from member of press and public. Can I ask the member of public to leave the building due to the Percent Act of 100A, Local Government Act, amended member of press and public to exclude from this item. It holds private information disclosure. So can I ask if we leave the building? Thank you.